Cameras are rolling.
Got it.
Don't pick your nose.
Well, then what am I to do?
Pick your friend's nose.
Okay, lean over.
Okay. Let's do it.
The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright, and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics, Season 6 with Mike Stein, the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stein is a registered journeyman farrier with an 8PF1 accreditation. On this week's show, we go back to talking terminology. This week, we're going to talk about Coffin Bone Wing Fracture. Also, Mike's mentor, Tony Gonzalez, and his intro book to proper balance movement, the Diary of Lameness. We'll talk about that as well. And also a case study of a horse named Charlie with a coffin bone wing fracture. All this and much, much more will be discussed here on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. And over to my far right side is Mike Stein. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. You look good. You look beautiful over there. You're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And we are ready for Season 6, which is starting now. And so we have 12 or more plus weeks of nonstop guests, nonstop information, and nonstop entertainment as well.
Have you ever been a used car salesman?
No.
You're good.
I've never been a used car salesman. I did, my whole entire life, I've waited tables one time for 30 days, and then that was it. I've been a waiter one time, and that was it. Most of my time was basically doing this in one shape or form. So
Okay.
there you go. So, and that's over several years. Now, here's something I want to show you guys. Now, don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video going along. You can see all the shenanigans and all the video and audio all the videos and pictures and stuff, the elements that we have here in the studio. Mike,
real bloopers.
the real bloopers in between takes and stuff. And anytime Mike will talk about something, we have this brand new overhead camera. I'm going to switch to camera 3. You can see Mike's got a coffin bone there on the table. And also, if there's any videos or pictures that we talk about here on the show, we have them over at the YouTube channel as well, and we can show you those in real time and talk about them here on the air. So make sure you go over to YouTube and subscribe to Mike Stein, Equine Dynamics as well. Now, 20 years ago, Mike, do you remember where you were 20 years ago?
20 years ago.
20 years ago.
I wasn't here.
You were not here, but what were you doing?
I was probably shoeing horses somewhere.
So you were shoeing horses, but you were 20 years younger than you were today.
Right.
Probably in a lot better health and a lot better stretching, a lot more performative, as far as bending and twisting and doing all that stuff. You were probably a little bit more apt to do that rather than now as much.
Maybe, yes. Yes.
So on the Facebook, you've got the Facebook page.
Right.
That's Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. Make sure you like and subscribe to him over there. There's also another Facebook page that we follow here in Charlotte. Now, we broadcast just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, a little town we like to call Marshville, home of Randy Travis.
Right.
And if you saw us at our live event a few weeks back, we were over at the JL Elite Feed and Seed. So we had a great time over there. We'd like to thank them again for having us out there. And my wife, 20 years ago, now my wife has been riding as a child, at least until 10, 11, 12 years old, she's always ridden. Her mom has always rode, and when the mom couldn't ride anymore to take care of the kids, Amy, my wife, as a child, took over that role as the horse rider in the family. So over the years, she's had several horses. She would lease a horse there and lease a horse there, and then 1-year lease or 5-year lease or whatever. When you lease a horse, I don't know how that works.
I don't either.
Well, and then she got to be an adult, graduated high school, went to college, did her college thing, got a real good professional job. So she had a little bit of money. So now she's buying horses. And she would buy a horse, $5,000 for a horse is nothing really compared to the horses that we have now on our property. But $5,000 for a horse, and then she would learn and train on that horse. And then she would sell that horse and then buy one that's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more talented, a little bit more higher level of a horse. Now, the reason why I tell you this is to tell you this. If you watch, I'm going to switch cameras here. Let's see if I can do this on the fly. So here we go.
Flies.
Over on Charlotte Area Equestrian, and my wife and I both subscribe to this Facebook page, it says right here, it's a 16-hand, 23-year-old TB gelding named Redon, R-E-D-O-N. Barn name is Quigley. Needs to be gone as soon as possible, but will not just go to anyone. Quigley has been there and done that. Quigley has been there and done that, gentlemen. A barn favorite. There is not enough good things to say about him. Hunter, jumper, eventing, Western fun shows, trail rides. He will do what he loves to do and do it all day long. He gets in the mix. He gets along with a mix of herds, and also is good with dog, cats, goats, chickens. Was my competition horse for a while, and then taught beginner lessons in my program. Stands, tied, and groom, tacking, bathing. Loads well, but hesitates when he first doesn't trust you. Can be stalled for 24/7. Eats Pro Force and so on and so forth. So we saw this picture, and this is Quigley,
Right.
and we're laying in bed and going through the Facebook pages as people do before they go to sleep, and Amy screams out, "Oh my God!" I'm like, what? She's like, "Look at this," and I go, "Yeah."
It looks like Quigley.
She's like, "This is Quigley." I go, "Yeah, Quigley." She's like, "Do you remember my horse Quigley?" Now I haven't. 20 years ago, I didn't know my wife.
Right.
But in her tack room, she's got pictures of all the different horses from all the different shows. And the reason why she recognizes Quigley, because Quigley's got like this missile arrow on his forehead.
Right.
The blaze that's on front. And so here's Quigley that the lady's selling, who's now 23 years old. Here's Quigley at 4 years old.
Nice.
Look at this. So there's my wife, and this is Quigley, and she was a hunter jumper at the time, and she bought the horse, trained the horse, and then flipped the horse, for a profit. But now this young lady who's on the Charlotte area equestrians has Quigley, says it's the best horse, well, not the best horse, but it's a really, really good, solid training horse, really good. So I just thought that was really, really interesting. Now, this is up in Charlotte, and you're like, oh, well, what's so big about that? Everyone has horses all day long. My wife and I are from Orlando, Florida.
Right.
So how did this horse go from Orlando, Florida, 20-year trip all the way up to Charlotte, North Carolina?
I bet it involved a horse trailer. They put him in the trailer, rode him up the road, and ended up in Charlotte.
But yeah, so that's a one-off thing where you really don't, you've had a horse, and 20 years ago, my wife was in her very early 20s. And now, 20 years ago, you can do the math there. And now she's seeing this horse that's doing all this show and still active out there in the horse community. And
still looking good.
Still looking good. And that's a testament to taking care of your horse.
Right.
From the ground up, making a good, sound, solid horse, staying on top of the horse, watching its diet. I know Dominique's out there, big fat cow rolling around out there. Just because we don't have the time right now to train her, because Amy trains offside all the time. I know we back down on her vittles and all that, but that's where we're at. So it's just great to see that Quigley's still out there, and this young lady needs to get rid of her, whatever the case may be. Who knows? Personal, whatever. But yeah, Quigley's still out there, and that was my wife's horse, 20 some odd years ago. So I just thought it was a real interesting thing that we came across.
Quigley's looking good.
Yeah. Have you ever run into something like that where you've had a horse in the early part of your career and you're like going, yes, this is what you need to do, and then 20 years down the road you come across that horse again across your doorstep?
I have run across a few horses later in life that I've not seen for a good many years. And
now, did you see them in good condition, or kind of like a I told you so type condition, or it was just one of those happenstance?
It's just one of those happenstance. Hopefully they're all in good condition at that age. But, Quigley looks like he's still ready to go.
So there you go. There's Quigley. All right, guys, stick around. We got a big show to get into, lots to talk about. And if you have any questions for Mike Stein, the way you get those questions in is to go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says podcast. Fill out that little form for a question, and we'll send you out some free swag. We have a prize pack for you that we can send out to you. Make sure you put your return address as well, and we'll get you out something for free. All right, guys, stick around. Lots to talk about. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. He'll be right back. There you go. First segment in the books, Mike.
You got it.
Yeah, I just thought that she freaked out. I'm like going, oh my God. So
That is Quigley.
She called it a penis on her. I was trying to figure out the best way to.
Well,
it's an arrow rocket pointer.
there you go.
She did say that, like in the early state, because he was young. Quigley was
Right.
young. He was kind of a
Well,
pissant sometimes.
yeah,
It could be right or most of the time, though.
I'm sure that's what Quigley thinks.
Right, it is Quigley's thing. All right, guys, you ready for
Yes.
talking terminology? All right, here we go. We're going to go camera 6. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. If you'd like Mike Stein to come out and perform a clinic at your location, the way you do that is go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says clinics. Fill that out. Mike will schedule you, and you can have us, or you can have Mike Stein out there at your location, and he can give you a performance as far as clinics. And he's got a lot of visual things. He's got horse legs, all bones, and he'll give you a description of what can go wrong with a horse and anything that you need to do. He's got a big horse named Dolly that he brings along with him as well. It's a full skeleton of a horse that you can touch and feel and see the actual innards of a horse as well. And over to my far hand side, my very own innard is Mike Stein. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Did I get all that out there right?
You got something out there, yeah.
So now we're going to talk. Oh, Jesus. Lost the lights.
Oh, no.
Place is falling apart.
I can't have nothing.
Mike's got to get your good side, Mike. I'll just leave it like that.
There's not one.
There you go. All right. Talking terminology. Coffin bone wing fracture. When speaking of the coffin bone, also called the P3.
P3 pedal bone.
What else is it called? It's called the third
phalanx.
Okay. The wing fracture is a non-articular, not involving a joint, fracture of the palmar process in the front limb or plantar process, the hind limb of the bone coffin, commonly known as a wing of a coffin bone. So, Mike, you've got I'm going to switch to camera 3 here so we can all see this. And you guys, don't forget, you can go over to YouTube right now. Make sure you like and subscribe, and you can see this coffin bone that Mike has on his thing right here.
This is from the bottom view, and this would be the wing coming out over here. This bone has some erosion, so some of it's missing. And most wing fractures would be out of the articulating surface of the joint, which is right here. But the one that I got the call on the other week, it actually is into the joint a little bit.
Now, what would cause that bone to crack right there?
It's probably an impact thing.
Okay.
You know, just hit the ground the right way hard. Occasionally, you would see this on a thoroughbred racehorse, which I'm not trying to pick on racehorses. I've had other horses that have done it. And apparently this horse did it on turnout. So out clowning around, acting up, being a fool, running hard, cutting, kicking, whatever the horse was doing. But there was enough of an impact to cause a little damage.
Now you've got some pictures of a job or a horse. No, we don't. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're jumping the gun.
I am jumping the gun. It's the first day back, Mike.
Right.
We're trying to get back into the rhythm of everything going. So,
normally, just like the impact would have popped this up.
Now, is this the wing bone or the coffin bone wing fracture? Is it I don't want to use the term death sentence. Is it a career ender, or can it be a career ender?
I've dealt with a number of these over the years. Typically, no. It's uncomfortable for a while, and if you've got to break something on a horse's leg, well, that's probably one of the things you might want to break. Not to say that you want to break anything, but I've probably one of the ugliest ones I had. The wing was in about 5 pieces, and the last couple little pieces out where the wing comes out to a point had, separated. We were able to. At that time, you actually kind of want the foot to contract, because then if the piece is separated, you can use the hoof capsule like a casting, and it pulls it back in and helps hold it in place. But we had some abscessing because the last couple little pieces out the back, that did not reconnect, they abscessed out, and during the abscessing, the little bit of bone that was left there eroded away, and was just gone. And at that point, once the horse went back to full work.
So Coffin Bone Wing Fracture is the fracture that you were showing us here. Let me switch back to pick that back up again.
Yes.
All right. So that is, wrong shot there. So that is, show us where again that is?
This would be the wing. This would be the wing coming back here. And from the top, this part would be the wing of the coffin bone on either side. Like I say, this is eroded off. And the one that I was talking about that we busted into 5 pieces, now that horse had been galloping and went through some brush and actually crammed a little bit of, like they bush hogged, but crammed some of that debris down the coronary band, went down the front of the foot. And I guess when it did, it snapped the foot back real hard, and then you got that fracture.
The horse's feet, from talking to you over the years and all the different episodes that we've done here on Equine Dynamite, the horse's feet are so sensitive. It's surprising that they can do what they do in eventing and competitions and racing and just normal everyday wear and tear. Technically, structurally, a horse shouldn't exist.
They shouldn't exist with humans.
Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe.
Well, you can ask Sally, the Mustang. Humans are good for bringing food. But, out there where those guys lived and with his feet in particular, with the amount of hoof wall he has, he's not a domestic horse. It is not a domestic horse foot. Big, thick, heavy hoof walls. And some of the Mustangs don't have thick hoof walls, but he has extremely thick hoof walls. I've seen several of them that do, depending on where they were. But are his feet sensitive? No, you could gallop them down a railroad track. So it depends on, that's going to be an individual thing. There are plenty of horses, because of what we've done breeding with them over generations. And well, we don't want a horse with great big feet. Small feet are Purdy. So what do we go back to, and why is the foot sensitive, and how long did we take to develop that as far as our program?
And what field would you want small, pretty horse feet?
Showing.
But, if you have small, pretty horse feet, that'd be like a ballerina trying to run hurdles.
Yes.
Is that exactly?
Some ballerinas could probably beat you pretty bad on hurdles, Travis. I wouldn't say that.
I have a hard time getting up and down out of this chair, let alone lift my leg to go over a hurdle.
Well, I wouldn't, but no, for halter, when people look at a horse, they want great big chunky feet on them. They don't. A lot of people don't over the years, but on the other end, you got to have foundation under them that's solid enough to carry the animal. There are horses out there that have little 800-pound feet with 1,200-1,400 pounds of horse sitting on top of it.
It's like the guy I see, the big guy in Walmart. He's like, easily 400 pounds, and his ankles are as big as coffee stirrers. You're like going, how does that work? How does that happen there? And that's the same way if you want small feet on a horse. I think you would want a nice, reasonable.
Something reasonable, yes.
Yeah.
And the breeds are different, and we've done a lot of stuff breeding horses about what humans thought was pretty wasn't necessarily durable.
So what is it? Visual as to what's the word I'm looking for?
They're looking for the aesthetics over function.
That's exactly. Thank you. Mike chimes in with the big words and wins us home.
Every now and then I get lucky. I can use a big word, but it's not like I really know what it means.
All
it's just I can spit out a big word occasionally.
All right, guys, stick around. A lot more big words coming up. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Sine. He'll be right back. Sorry, we were talking about the wing fracture, and I was like, I should be pulling the pictures up. I was like, no, wait, that's our third segment.
Right. We're good.
All right.
We're good.
Sorry.
Well, if we had, we'd just run with it wherever we ran,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mike, mentor Tony Gonzalez, how do you want to go into this? Do you have a story leading into this?
Well, that's kind of what I was wanting to lead into it, talking about the opening of the book.
Okay.
And I will speak about Tony a little bit. I guess how I met him to start.
All right, yeah, make it short because there's a lot of reading, and
right.
Okay, so I'll say, hey, is this his anniversary of this book coming out or anything?
No. In fact, you can't really find the book.
Okay, is it online at all or no? No, probably not.
No, but that's where Dolly came from.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. Don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video, and you can see all the visuals that happen here in the studio. Just go over to YouTube, like and subscribe over there, Equine Dynamics Mike Stein on YouTube, and you can see all the different videos from the last 5 seasons. And we are starting season number 6 right here, and we're going to have 12 or so weeks plus of a lot of visuals, a lot of guests here in the studio, and also a lot of call-in, phone call interviews that we're going to have here. So make sure you like and subscribe over there as well. And over to my far hand side is Mike Stein. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Now, I mentioned earlier about having you come out and do your clinics, and you have all the visual stuff to come out. You've got freeze-dried horses' legs that have been cut in half, and they show all the coffin bones,
Right.
all the scapulas. I'm making up words that I remember.
Scapula's a big word, yeah.
It's a big word. I told you, we're going to have a lot of big words this season. And I mentioned something about Dolly, and I kind of briefly described what Dolly was. Tell us who Dolly is, where you got it, and how it came to be for you to have Dolly.
Okay, Dolly was a teaching tool that came to me through my years of going back and forth with Tony Gonzalez. Tony looked at a lot of body posture, function, mechanics, and looked really focused on more on the top of the body and what was going on there than you might find a lot of farriers do. And he was involved with some research with James Rooney, who is gone. James was looking at doing necropsies and looking at wear patterns. And Tony had done a lot of work with him and gone way past what the university had allowed to pay Tony for the work. So James Rooney had spoke to Tony about, is there something we can do for you, because we can't pay any more. It's not in the budget. And Tony's like, look, I just want to do this, because he got excited about stuff. He was a character. And so they prepared Dolly for Tony. She didn't have the rib cage because for him to take her places and use her to teach, it was pretty impractical as far as packing and reassembling.
So we're going to talk about, so Tony was your mentor.
One of them, yes.
Yes. And he wrote a book.
Proper Balance Movement, A Diary of Lameness.
So proper balance of movement.
PBM.
PBM. And we're going to read a small little insert. Now, tell us, Mike, a little bit about this insert. This is the introduction to his book. So tell us why we're focusing on this introduction.
Well, the introduction, I kind of want to focus on the book through this series and some of the stuff that Tony had done and bring that out, because, there's a lot of stuff that has come out over the years. And I'll tell you, dealing with Tony before the strokes and then after the strokes, some of the stuff that came out was nowhere near where he was working before the strokes. And there's too many things that are publicized out there that are where people have gone, after the strokes, this is what I was doing. He did some stuff for demo to get some points across. But as far as his working in the field with horses, it was a completely different ballgame.
So this is an excerpt from the introduction of the book, PBM, A Diary of Lameness, from Tony Stewart. Now,
Tony Gonzalez.
Sorry, Tony Gonzalez. Tony Stewart is a totally different character. But this is from the publisher. So this is what the publisher actually wrote in the introduction. And it goes like this. Starting and publishing is an addictive business, and it gets an insight and changes the way people think. Somebody walks into the office with a totally new idea. Everything breaks loose. The coffee cups get shoved back, and the pencils come down off the ears, and a hush settles over a thick spring fog on a Blue Ridge mountain. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, nothing can match that high. When Tony Gonzalez walked into my office, followed by a couple of apprentices decked out in all field gear, I was frankly expecting to see a manuscript of what would change millions of lives. I wasn't expecting, sorry. I had questioned everything. Tony is in touch with this older, holistic approach that he adds to the aggressive drive of a good investigative reporter. The product is a book which will be the first textbook of an entire new science of horseshoeing. That attention will make a multi-million-dollar change in the American horse business. Lameness will never go away, but it can be treated, corrected, and often actually be prevented. It is difficult to break in new ground with professionals already having an answer for everything. Tony is a good judgment to take this into consideration and develop his theory slowly, testing each concept in real life. and discussing each element of the key thinkers in the field before going public. The time for this book has arrived, and I couldn't be prouder to be the publisher. And that was written by Edwin P. Elliott Jr. from REF Publishing in Manassas, Virginia.
Well, I'll tell you something about Tony, and I know when they walked in the office, this was one of the stories he told. They went in wearing farrier's aprons and all bit because he wanted to walk in there, and then I said, "Whoa, these are not guys. I didn't want to walk in there in a suit."
Yeah, these aren't business guys.
I don't want them to think, and I wanted them to, as soon as we walk in the door, get their attention, which Tony was big on getting people's attention.
Like a showman almost.
He had a lot of showman in him. When he first moved to the States, he said he wore flamboyant bell-bottoms and Hawaiian flower shirts when he was in Northern Virginia because he wanted people talking about him. He went to the bar. He said, "You couldn't get away with it, but I was Hawaiian. I could."
I'm not from here.
He said, at first people were like, "Do you see that idiot come in the bar and how he was dressed wearing pink bell-bottoms and this, that, and the other thing? And oh my God, and all this." And so pretty soon it's like, hey, he's getting something done with horses. By then, everybody had talked from barn to barn to barn about him, and they kept talking about him. So that's how he got known real quick. But you know, he was a bit of a showman. But on the other end, on some of what Tony had done, when he was doing live demos, there were some things he would do to square up a horse real fast. Use a lot of padding to square up a horse real fast, create an immediate results. But the reality was, when we were working on horses long term in the field, there was very little padding used, and the goal was to get away from it altogether. But the problem I have run into is Tony had a few strokes. The first stroke, he didn't think he would ever come back. Second stroke, it's like it fixed some of what happened in the first stroke, and he came back and started doing some work, did some talks, tried. He says, "I can't do this anymore." And then he'd had a couple more strokes, and it's like every time there was a stroke, there was some of Tony missing. And he'd kind of gotten mad because some people had kind of gotten a hold of him, started telling him, "Well, this is what you were doing, this is what you're doing, this is what you were doing," because they'd seen some live demos.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." The friends wouldn't steer me wrong. To some of these people like Clyde Caldwell, where there was a long time with Tony, was like, "Whoa, back up a minute. We need to rethink what you're saying here." But these are my friends. They wouldn't tell me wrong because Tony was not Tony anymore. And I'm afraid that some of the stuff has gotten out there and spread around and some people have run with, was what came out of Tony after a series of strokes. And, you know, the idea was to do it with a minimal amount of whatever on horse's feet. Now, I'm not going to say I don't ever use a pad, because I do. But it's your skills in the forge. And really the big thing with him was really fine-tuning what you did with the foot. And you can get the body to react. And the more refined you get with what you do trimming a foot, the better you can get the body to react, the less you need to do all these other things.
Now, is this book available out anywhere?
There are a few that come up for sale when on like aftermarket. You know, somebody decides to sell a book.
Found it at a garage sale or something?
Found it at a garage sale. But they've not been printed in some time. I know when Tony passed away, I had picked up a Lifetime Achievement Award for him. And I went out to California to take it to him, went down to his daughters. He knew I was coming out. Mm-hmm. She said he was having a hard time putting together who I was, but he knew somebody that from his past was coming to see him. His blood pressure spiked up, and he was in ICU, and I couldn't see him, but I delivered the chart, the plaque.
This right here says March 15th, 1986 is when this book was published.
Right. And so...
You gave him the plaque.
I gave him the plaque, or gave her the plaque, and she had a few of them in the closet, and we had talked about it. But then after Tony had passed away, I had spoke with her, and then a few months later had tried calling back to speak with her, and somebody else had the number. And so then kind of lost track from there. I was told by somebody that she went back home.
Now,
you know, to what?
Now, this season, we're going to talk about little short excerpts from this book.
Right.
So you have the copy of this book?
Yes.
Okay. So don't lose it laminated or something.
No. I've got a book. I actually have a second book that we're going to use for this.
Okay.
And I have a book that is a keepsake because Tony wrote some stuff in there for me.
Okay. Yeah, that makes it very, very personal. All right, guys, when we come back, we're going to talk about Charlie and the Coffin Bone Wing Fracture that we discussed earlier in the program. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. He'll be right back. I promise. I promise he'll be right back.
Yeah, you say things like that, but we know how you are, so it may not be true.
Yeah, I stretch the truth a little bit.
Nobody ever does that. I've never seen that.
Never. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. If you have a question for Mike Stein, you can email him at any time at equinedynamics.com and ask your question. It's at the very top of the page. It says contact us. Make sure you put your return address in there, and we'll send you out one of our prize packs. We got a whole bunch of magnets, some stickers, some buttons, some keychains, and stuff left over from our live event.
So we have stuff that has been stuffed.
Yeah, we have stuff on top of stuff. And speaking of being stuffed, that is Mike Stein over there. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing?
Doing all right. So right now, we're going to talk about a case study by the name of Charlie. Now, the reason why we're talking about Charlie is because earlier we were talking about talking terminology, Coffin Bone Wing Fracture. And now this is an actual incident that you came across. You were called out to help this horse, Charlie, because he actually had a wing fracture. Now, don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. You can see this over in real time. If you go over to YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, and you can see all the visuals that we have here in the studio. So I'm going to switch to camera. What camera am I going to? Mike, what camera do you want me to go to? I'll go to camera 3.
Let's go to camera 3.
Camera 3. So here's camera 3.
Is that camera 3?
Nope. It's camera 6. There we go. So here's camera 6.
Camera 6.
Yep.
Okay.
So what are we looking at here? It's an x-ray, of course.
That is a view of a coffin bone.
Okay.
From the top. And right there.
Yep.
You see that?
That is a coffin bone wing fracture. Am I correct on that?
That is a coffin bone wing fracture. It's a little more forward than a lot of them are, because that does involve the wing of the coffin bone, but it actually gets into the edge of the articulating part of the joint.
Yep. You're on camera 3. Go ahead.
Okay. So, can that show?
Yeah. You're right there.
Okay. So see, this is the articulating surface. Most of the time, the wing fracture is going to be completely behind that. So this is actually up into here a bit. So that makes it a little more difficult than your normal wing fracture. Okay. Can you go to the lateral view?
Yep. There you go.
Okay. Right there. You see? Yeah. There you go.
That looks like his whole entire heel broke off.
Yeah. Kinda. Yeah.
I mean, coffin bone heel. I'm thinking my foot.
Right. So that's your fracture piece. This is a few weeks after the injury by the time I got involved. The other thing you're going to notice about this horse is, well, there's no nail holes showing in the x-ray, because you can see nail holes. At this point, this was not a nailed-on shoe. But if you look at that coffin bone at the tip, okay, here's some other problems. It's got some remodeling there. That's from trauma. If you look at the thick...
Oh, hold on. Where's the remodeling?
Right above right there. See that little bit of an elf toe?
Yes.
That should not be shaped like that.
How did that happen?
Well, if you look at the sole on this horse, look how thick it is. There's not much there. You can about feel its pulse right through the bottom of his foot. If you look at that thickness between your x-ray block and the coffin bone itself, and you look at... You're kind of gauging using that dorsal wall. If you have the thickness of the dorsal wall to that bone, that's probably going to be fairly healthy if that will come pretty close to matching up.
Okay, so what was this horse's job that his feet were like this?
This horse likes eating, makes fertilizer for your garden, but no, they do competitive. What do you call it? They shoot balloons.
They shoot balloons. Shoot balloons.
Balloon.
Okay.
You can shoot a balloon if you like, but they shoot balloons.
Gotcha.
They have
an archer on the back of a horse.
Cowboy-mounted shooting. And they have black powder loads, so they're basically shooting black powder other than the 45 and no bullets.
Oh, I was thinking shooter like an archer shooter.
Right.
Do they have those too on those?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so they do the whole range, the whole gambit of all.
There are people that shoot archery off a horseback, yes. But, yeah, okay. But they have a timed event, and that's what this horse does for a career.
So this horse really doesn't have a whole lot of stress as if it was a race horse or an eventing horse or a dressage horse.
Let's don't say that.
Okay, I won't say that.
Because when these horses do the balloon shooting, you have a course and you have 5 on one side, 5 on the other. They'll carry 2 revolvers and swap. You have an empty chamber for safety, and then you have 5 shots. Boom, 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 and they're going through this course and moving out of the gallop. They're getting on down the road. So there is some stress, but this horse was out in turnout and came in lame. They were looking for an abscess, and the horse was responsive to hoof testers, but look how thin that sole is. Mm-hmm. Now, working on this horse, one of my concerns is while we've got the horse down, let's get some sole mass under it, because that is, as far as that amount of sole mass, that's a bit of a dangerous situation.
So with this broken coffin bone wing fracture, as the horse is walking, do you see a change in the gait of the horse? Or, I mean, how would I notice? What am I looking for?
What would you walk like if you had a broken toe?
I wouldn't walk at all. I'd be sitting on the couch crying.
Well, this one's not sitting on the couch crying, but they're going to.
Are they limping?
Typically, they're going to be limping. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a painful thing for him, because I know that there's no nerve.
Well, the horse showed up with some lameness, and first thing, checked with hoof testers. Well, with that sole, look how thin it is. You can press it on the thumb and about make a horse give. So the thought was maybe the horse had an abscess. I was not involved until after the fact, and so nothing came of the abscess. It was soaked. Finally, after couple of weeks, let's get an x-ray unit out here and see if we can see the abscess pocket. And when they shot the lateral view, it's like, that doesn't look like an abscess. That looks like a fracture.
So how did the horse have so much less sole depth in its hoof? How did it get to this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good question.
Well, thank you very much. I came up with it myself.
You came up with a wonderful question. All I know is this is what I was presented with when I got the x-rays on the horse.
Okay.
As far as the maintenance of the horse's feet, somebody else had been doing that, not me. That was not one of my clients. I hate to get into anything that somebody could say is whatever. I've got horses that I work on myself that are very difficult to get any sole depth on. Some of it's breed, some of it's structural. These feet were not. They tended to want to flare all over the place and flatten out. So structurally, it's not the most solid foot. And but as far as life-threatening, the depth of that sole is actually more life-threatening than the fracture itself.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. And so anyway, in prepping the horse, which I did end up going over there and doing some work on the horse, and there's the top view.
I got a proof that he was out there. There's Mike.
I was out there. Okay, in that picture, that is the left side I'm on, and you can see where my hair's thinning out and where I stuck my safety glasses, so I could wander around the barn looking for them next time I use power tools and not find them because they got lost. But if you look at the foot that's down, I worked on the foot with the problem first. And that's the foot that the horse is actually standing on. And what you're seeing is the back end of a Redden Ultimate package that is glued to the foot. We're not going for Purdy. We're just getting some mechanics. And what we're doing is unloading the flexor tendon. And I've got felt inside of it, instead of in the whole inside of it under where you might normally put impression material in, filled in with felt. For a couple of reasons. I don't want the foot not to be able to contract a little bit from being off the back, and also modified the bottom of the boot heavily. I moved the breakover way back on it, on medial laterally, so the horse can roll left, roll right. And I brought the forward breakover up almost under the middle of the boot and rolled it out like it was like rolling across a ball. So because two things, we want to get the mechanical pressure off of the coffin bone. For two reasons. One thing, we need to allow that fracture to take care of itself. The other thing is the coffin bone pressing into the sole corium. You've got very little distance there to work with, and the circumflex artery runs around the outside of the coffin bone, but then it has to feed under the edges of the coffin bone to the sole corium, and there's not enough room for healthy tissue there. So what we're doing is, by picking it up, if you feel you can see the superficial flexure that is to the back, but if you feel in front of it, what we did was brought it up enough and put enough roll in it to soften that flexor tendon. Flexor tendon goes down and attaches to the coffin bone. If we soften the pressure on the flexor tendon, we soften the pressure against the sulcorium, and that is to allow blood flow to come under the coffin bone to feed the sulcorium so we can grow some sole. I use this quite regular as like a first aid emergency deal on laminitic horses with no sole depth, and I'm able to get a lot of sole under them fairly quickly. So while I got the horse out of commission, A, let's take care of the coffin bone. B, let's get some depth under the horse. And this is after we're done. Remember, this horse has a coffin bone fracture on that right front.
Hold on. I got to catch up to this.
This one? Beamer.
Hammer.
Beamer.
Beamer. Okay, let's turn. Right front medial wing of the coffin bone, we have a fracture. And we just glued on some ultimate boots to get some pressure off, get this guy a chance to heal, and just ease him around to see how comfortable we got him. You could just about ride him if you wanted to. Just bring him back the other way in the turn. There you go. Want to talk to a friend? Okay.
There we go.
Can't have nothing.
All right, so you patched up the horse's foot.
Right.
Now, is the horse's foot, like for anyone that's broken a finger, broken just a digit, ankle or whatever, it's just not a 100%. You always have, the bone doesn't really go back together just right. If you've broken your arm, now you have a limited motion on that arm because it was broken at one time. Is this horse, because of that wing, the coffin bone wing fracture, is it going to have limited or minimal maneuverability or any kind of change in its pattern as far as walking or running or doing anything?
Well, we can see how it walks out here in a minute. But,
all right.
The truth is, Travis, the ones I've dealt with in past history have gone back to full work typically. Some of them weren't any work anyway, so that didn't matter. But the coffin bone fractures, if you've dealt with a few of them, whether it be a perimeter rim fracture, which would be around this part.
Yep. Sorry. There you go.
The perimeter of the coffin bone, having this part, most of them will be small chips. Every now and then you'll get a large chunk knocked out of them, which I've dealt with that, and that was an old one, had been there for a while, and I'm afraid that the horse went septic, but it had an area in there that was like kind of like this, knocked out of the center of the coffin bone.
Jeez.
It was a big piece. Most of them are little tiny chips, and those will demineralize and go away. But the one where we had a pretty large break in there, it wasn't involving the joint. It had been messed around with for a few months by the time it got to the vet clinic, and the foot went septic, and there we go. So if we'd come in early on the deal, we could have had a very different outcome. But the one where we had a pretty large break in there, it wasn't involving the joint. It had been messed around with for a few months by the time it got to the vet clinic, and the foot went septic, and there we go. So if we'd come in early on the deal, we could have had a very different outcome. On this, if we'd had gone ahead and moved on this thing a few weeks earlier, I would have felt better about that. There's going to be some follow-up x-rays. As long as everything will knit back into place and we don't get any weird calcifications into the articulating surface of that joint, this horse can rock and roll for a long time.
All right, so now you have a video of the horse. Now this is the same day. You've put the
This is the same day.
You've put the boots on the horse.
And this is after we're done.
And Charlie's getting ready to walk.
We're going to see what Charlie feels like, and he's going to be living in a stall for a while. But we're just easing him around just to make sure he's happy enough. And this is with a wing fracture on that right front.
So he's walking. Mm-hmm. He looks like he's normal. He's ready to go out there and party. Turn him around. So
the turn was not too terrible. It's a medial side fracture, so when he turned on that right front, it turned onto the fracture. He didn't look too uncomfortable.
No, he did pick it up quick. I could tell there.
Right.
And then here he is walking back in. He's happy.
He's happy, and he's going to spend the next few weeks fairly well in the stall and allow that time to heal up. But he just wanted to do a real quick check to make sure that we didn't have to. And on those boots, they're glued so that as far as stability of the hoof wall, the cuff around the hoof wall stabilizes that. And normally what I do with these things is if I need to make any adjustments, I don't need, because, well, you got to take them off. No, you don't. And I'll keep them in these things for a long time. 12, 14 weeks is not uncommon. But if I need to make adjustments, you just trim the bottom of the boot like you would the foot. I can take 4.5 inch. You just trim the bottom of the boot like you would the foot. I can take 4.5 inch grinder to it. Zip, zip, zip real quick. Alter breakover. You can lower it. You can raise the angle. You can do all that with the boot.
So what's the recovery time on it?
Hopefully, I mean, in normal conditions, with the coffin bone fracture on its own, some of those things can start going back to work in a couple of months.
So 2 months. So you're looking about like 8 weeks.
Now on this horse, the young lady who owns the horse is getting ready to go to farrier school herself. She wanted to learn about being a farrier.
Oh, good for her.
She wants to learn fast. The horse gave her big lessons in a hurry, but
is she going to join the IAPF?
I hope so.
Okay, well, there you go.
Hope she decides to educate herself for the rest of her career. Yes, but you know the thing of it is that what's going to take longer is getting. There's maybe 4 millimeters of depth under that foot, and I want to see 15.
So that's the biggest challenge, getting more.
Right. To me, that some of the stuff is to the point where it is going to land where it lands pretty much. And we got to see how that joint heals. And as long as the articulated surface stays clean, this horse will ride.
Now, when you were talking to the owner of the horse and you said, hey, look, you've only got 4 millimeters. We'd like to see 15 millimeters. What was their kind of response of like, oh, I didn't know that? Or,
well, it was kind of by the time it got back around to me, x-rays went to her, sent to another farrier. Other farrier sent to one of their mentors. Came back. Then in all this, it was like maybe we need to call Mike because he's dealt with this kind of stuff. So it'd been around the block a couple times, and several people had looked at it, and I was getting quizzed by the farrier they sent it to on my thoughts. And there's like, well, this is kind of the way that this person is saying about it that's dealt with them, that's out in Arizona and the horses in Carolinas and all that kind of stuff, that y'all are a little different package you get in there that I like to use because that's something I work with a lot. Now, the other way they were talking about, I've done that too, but I know where my success rates are better for me. So that's where I went with it.
And you've got good feeling about this horse.
And at this point in September, the horse is going to haul up to Virginia for a while, and hopefully by then they've got enough depth under that horse to work with. And if we need to do something in between, that's what we do. But my plan was to alter the boot as we need to until we get the depth under the foot before we break that thing loose.
Well, I hope a speedy recovery and everything turns out well for Charlie.
Yes. Charlie will be out killing balloons.
Darn balloons.
At about 30 miles an hour.
Jeez. All right, guys, stick around. One more little segment, and we'll let you get back to enjoying your horses. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. He'll be right back. Beep. All right. What we learn and wrap it up?
What did we learn?
I don't know. As soon as it comes out of my mouth, my brain goes, you forgot what you just said.
I forgot it before I said it.
I know.
So there you go.
Exactly. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. If you have a question for Mike Stein, go over to equinedynamics.com. Fill out that little form there. It says contact us. Ask yourself a question. We'll send you out a free prize pack. Make sure you put a return address in there as well, and we'll get that out to you really quickly. And also, if you'd like Mike Stein to perform a clinic out at your location, he's got a lot of visual stuff. He's got dollies. He's Dolly, which is a horse skeleton, a miniature horse, smaller horse. Skeleton to show you all the different variations of how to help your horse get sounder from the ground up. And fill out that little form, and Mike will get you scheduled as soon as possible. And over to my far inside is Mike Stein.
Hello, Travis. How are you doing today? I hadn't met you yet.
We are doing great. This is the...
You look pretty.
Thank you very much. You like my shirt?
I like your shirt.
I was afraid to wear this because sometimes you come up here with one of these shirts on. I was like, oh, we're going to clash. It's going to be horrible.
If I'd have known, we'd have worn matching.
No, I don't want to wear matching. I got to change it up a little bit. And you can see we kind of changed the setup here in the studio. And the way you can see all this fun and exciting visuals is go over YouTube as well and search for equinedynamics.com or Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. Make sure you subscribe to him as well, just so you can get one more actual aspect of the Equine Dynamics podcast. Now, Mike, what did we learn today?
Today we talked about...
Well, hold on. I got to go down the list. You forgot how to do this. So
I did forget how to do this.
So what did we learn today? Today we learned talking terminology, coffin bone wing fracture. When speaking of the coffin bone, also called the P3, the wing fracture is a non-articular, not involving the joint, fracture of the palmar process in the front or plantar process in the hind limb. So what is a coffin bone wing fracture?
It's a break of the wing of the coffin bone. I would say normally, but occasionally it can get into the back edge of the joint. Now, on the other end, one of our discussions we have over and over and over, sometimes when you have a lame horse, sometimes you should get somebody out with an x-ray unit, because the quicker you get on these things, the better off you are, and you don't know until you know. So you need to know.
And now you know.
And now you know.
And the book written by a mentor, one of Mike's mentor, Tony Gonzalez. The book is called Proper Balance Movement, A Diary of Lameness. And we read a short little snippet from the intro as far as the gentleman, well, I'll pull up his name so we can get credit for it, Edwin P. Elliott Jr. from REF Publishing, was excited to see and hear what Tony Gonzalez had to say, because he knew that Tony Gonzalez was going to flip the horse community upside down with his theories and training and the way he approached shoeing a horse and getting the...
He had a lot of theories.
Yes. So and we read a little snippet on that. And we're going to be discussing this book along with other books during this podcast as well. So make sure you like and subscribe and follow us for all season 6. 12 and a half weeks to a little over 12 weeks of all this information will be available on this podcast. Also, a case study of Charlie, who actually had a coffin bone wing fracture.
That is, Charlie, this is the reason that we brought this up today, because it's something I'm actually working on at the moment. And as things pop up in my schedule, that's kind of what we do, have the case of the week or whatever. And there's always something to discuss every time we go in a barn. So, you need to be looking, need to be paying attention, need to be thinking, and sometimes we need some x-rays.
And Charlie, what boot did you put on Charlie to help him with that?
I used a Red and Ultimate, which I carry those because I use it as a first aid deal for the laminated horses, but they do have other uses, as you see. I mean, that horse, for having the fracture, he was real happy moving around for what we needed to do just to check him over.
If you were to show me that horse and not tell me anything, I'm like going, why is this horse just going out and walking in a circle and coming back? And then you would say, well, he had a broken coffin bone. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's incredible. That with less than how many hours did it take for you to put that back together?
Took a little bit,
right,
and took a lot of years of training. And I'll be going back to Dr. Edens this summer. And if you want to get into extreme foot problems, you'll need to look him up.
And when is that normally? When does he do his big clinic?
Well, I'm going out there in July for a week. I went out there last year. He does a couple a year that are an intense week, podiatry week. And as far as really ugly podiatry problems, this guy has dealt with them. He's built a 50 some odd year career around podiatry problems with horses.
All right, guys. Well, we'd like to thank you for listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. And make sure if you have any questions, go over to equinedynamics.com. Ask your questions over there. Also, if you'd like Mike to perform a clinic, you can find out all the information over there. And myself and Mike, or just Mike, if you don't want me to go, that's fine.
Who wants you?
No one wants me to be there. We can come out there at your location and perform a live show, or Mike can come out there and do a clinic as well. And make sure you like and subscribe over on YouTube. And I think that's it. Did I cover everything?
You covered everything, Travis, twice.
Well, welcome to season 6. We're gonna have it's gonna be a great season. I say that each season gets better and better. We have more guests and more information, and we hope you guys are enjoying. On behalf of Mike Stein over there,
have a good day. Enjoy your horses.
My name is Travis, saying see you next week.